at that point, you're not there to play it safe. Like if you're not taking risks, you're not competing.
It's empowering. I mean, anybody who's done a CrossFit workout, you finish your CrossFit workout and you're like, I'm on top of the world.
Yeah.
Like a hunger for competition and like that super intense structure, routine. I still had that desire.
Listen to the way people feel and the motivations for doing the things that they did. It was like they were describing me to a T.
I'm not trying to solve everything for you, but I know that sometimes you just need somebody to listen.
Learned the most is how to fill my cup by filling others.
Welcome to the Hungry Dog Barbell Podcast. Join me as I talk with passionate people about their life's failures and successes, and most importantly, what keeps them hungry for more. What up, dogs? Welcome back to the Hungry Dog Barbell Podcast. We got another returning guest. We got Nicole Foley. This is one of the really awesome episodes. I'm trying to think though, what year were you on? Was it last year? Was it right before your pregnancy, or was it the year before?
I think it was the year before, because I want to say it was like spring sometime. So I want to say it was 2021 because I was pretty much pregnant for all of
2022.
2022. Yep.
Yeah, 9 months is a long time. And that I never thought about it like that. It is like a whole year of a woman's life,
Mm-hmm. And technically they don't tell you this because they're like, 9 months, but 40 weeks. So it's really 10.
Yeah. But Nicole Foley back on here to talk about all kind of life updates, how life's going right now, training, coaching, all that stuff. But before we get there, Nicole, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Taylor.
That's awesome.
It's hot here, but other than that, I'm getting through. It's like the Texas heat is very new to me, and it's not kicking my butt, but it's definitely an adjustment. That's for sure.
It's coming close. So how has it been adjusting for you, the different weathers?
So it's weird because Virginia Beach is super humid. So we're right. So that's what I've been used to for the last 20 plus years, is just that constant humidity. Here though, they call it that dry heat.
Dry heat. Yeah.
When you know how if you pull up your weather app and it's 90 degrees, but the real feels 106 or whatever because of the humidity and everything, they still have that here. So it's not humid, but it still feels humid. And the temperature today is 102 or something, but the real feel is 114 or something crazy. Today's a crazy
my God.
day. Yeah, where it's super hot.
Because out there you're sizzle in the heat. That's the thing. It's scorching heat.
The weirdest part is going out and even just walking to the mailbox to grab your mail, and the temperature change from when you go outside to coming back into the air conditioning. Just I feel like I'm layered up in the house. And then if I'm going to go do anything outside, I got to take a sweatshirt off and sweatpants to go handle it.
Wow. So you guys have been there for about a year now? Is that around the time of the line? Yep. How many seasons have you gone through in that time? Does it feel like to you, I should say, actually?
So we actually it was a really weird winter in Texas. And apparently this is not super common, but we had a crazy ice storm in January. So, I've never, I grew up in New York, and then we'll get some snow in Virginia. It usually snows at least once a winter. But here it was 3 days where everything was just frozen solid.
Wow.
And shut everything down. We had, Danny tried to leave just to go see what the streets kind of looked like. And he didn't even make it off of our block because it was just sheets of ice covering everything. It was the wildest thing. So we had a full 4 seasons. Spring, I felt kind of got blurred because it was some nice days and then immediately just super hot. And now we're in the, dead heat of summer. But we went through fall, winter. It's just the shift of it all. So when we moved, we got here the beginning of September, and Texas had this massive heat wave through July and the beginning of August.
Wow.
So we bypassed all of that. But when we got here, it was still 80 degrees. And then it really wasn't until December that it started to get colder and then immediately kind of like kicked into like that winter like craziness that didn't last very long, and then it started to like slowly start to warm up again. But we definitely hit all four. Just the timelines of it all is just adjusted.
It's crazy. Did you feel like you brought the ice with you? Like all of a sudden they had an ice storm.
I told Danny, I was like, this is not what we signed up for. Like I was told warm weather. Like I knew about the heat, and I knew that was going to be an adjustment, and I was ready for that. But I was thinking like, I guess in my mind, and you know, I had nothing to base this off of, but I was thinking more like California, where it's just like, you know, it's a little bit cooler in the mornings and the evenings, but then it's like really nice during the day and stuff like that. So I was kind of expecting that to be like their winters and fall kind of style. And then all of a sudden it was like, oh God, it was something crazy, like 28 degrees and less for like 3 days. And so everything was just frozen. And I was like, what is
that's
going
crazy.
on? Yeah, that was wild.
New York and like the tri-state area, PA, like we haven't been covered in ice in like a long time. We've had some winters like that over the past 20-ish years, but like it's been a while since we've had like ice covered winters, you know?
Yeah.
And as soon as you said that too, that brought back like almost the whole old podcast. Cause I remember talking about you being born in New York and like, are you like a Jets fan or something like that?
Oh no. I mean, I guess that's the train to jump on right now with Aaron Rodgers coming in, but I'm a Giants fan.
Oh, so, I knew it was a New York team. And like, I just, as soon as you said that, I was like, oh, it's all coming back. And we talked about that a lot on the last episode. So now you've lived through a whole year of sports out there. What's that like? Because Texas is like big into sports too.
Texas is huge into sports. So obviously though, like New York Giants fan. So I can't rep the Cowboys in any way, shape or form, division rivals. So, but they are everywhere. Like every billboard is like the eye doctor of the Dallas Cowboys and the mattress of the Dallas Cowboys. And we actually went to the Thanksgiving Day game this past season. That was the Giants at Cowboy Stadium. So it was my first time going to AT&T.
That's so dope.
That is a beautiful, beautiful stadium. Like for as much as I hate the Cowboys, I couldn't knock the facility. Like that was
the house that Jerry Jones built.
Yep, he sure did. And he did a great job with it. Like it was.
Yeah, everybody knows. Impressive. Yeah.
That's awesome. But yeah, no, it's crazy. So high school and almost like high school and middle school football here is wild. So we actually have a middle school that's like right in front of our, it's inside of our neighborhood and like right at the end of our street.
Yeah.
And the first time we saw it, we were like, wow, what an incredible high school. Like this is huge. Like they have this beautiful turf field with a track around it. It's a huge school. And then all of a sudden we turn the corner and we see the sign and it's like middle school. I was like, what?
Yeah.
And the high schools are massive because we obviously have a couple around. So like seeing that as the middle school and then going and seeing some of these stadiums for high school teams, I'm like, holy crap. Like, it's incredible. They're very serious.
I'm sure you, just like me, grew up on like watching that movie Friday Night Lights. And Texas and Florida, they are both real big into the outdoor sports, but like football specifically, because it's nicer year round. So they could kind of be training like all the time. So their middle schools, they're looking for them to produce like higher level athletes from that age, you know?
Oh yeah.
You know,
and they're out there. Like, we used to see during the school year, like in season, that football team, they're out there at like 7, 8 in the morning practicing before school, like as if they were high school kids.
Yeah. That's crazy. Oh man. So we've been like talking about all the old stuff. Now tell me about something new. Like what's your schedule look like on a week to week with like, what do you have? A 6-month-old, 5-month-old, somewhere around there?
5-month-old. So she's 5 months old. She'll be 6 months the beginning of July. So she's coming up actually right on 6 months next week.
About to push 6. So what's the schedule like for you right now with that?
Chaos a little bit. So it's been kind of an interesting transition down here. So we have East Coast Gold. East Coast Gold actually has an affiliate gym in Texas, strong weightlifting, and they're about 45 minutes to an hour from where we live because we're out in Fort Worth. And so I had talked with Amanda a little bit about, getting in there and coaching and everything.
Is she the owner of there?
She's the owner of Strong Weightlifting. And funny enough, she actually just had a little girl literally 2 weeks before I had mine.
Wow.
So, yeah. So she's trying to navigate, coaching and her schedule. And we had talked about me kind of jumping in, but with how far they are from me and like the way their schedule for their team training lines up, and with Layla, it just now is not the time for me to be over there. So I've been doing a lot of stuff with Rude Rock online and focusing on that. And then I actually just got a job and started about 3 weeks ago with Team Builder.
What's that?
So Team Builder is a software tech company, but they design software for strength and conditioning coaches. So it's basically a programming platform that that's designed more for strength coaches in, high school, college, and professional weight rooms. And it's basically a way to distribute either in-person coaching within the weight rooms, but they're starting to tap more into that online programming platform. So Rude Rock, we use them as our online programming platform, and they were hiring remotely. So I applied and got hired, and I've been there for about 3 weeks, and that's been a lot of fun. So I've been
awesome.
kind of navigating the remote working from home space and figuring all of that out, which has been pretty cool.
Yeah, that's awesome. I mean, it's super hard to transition to new things though. So software training app like what's that one? Like True Coach, and what's the other one? The Cow Strength uses. They use another thing.
Train Heroic.
Train Heroic, yeah. And I didn't love Train Heroic. Sorry for anyone out there that's listening. I'm gonna leave this. I'm gonna leave that in there too. So tell me what it's been like working for that company. What's your role look like? How's it been you working with the software and being remote? Like I know that's mostly new to you, right? We developed those skills over the quarantine, but like now you're doing it full time. What's it been like?
It's been a lot of fun, actually, I will say. So when we moved down here, I didn't really want to look for something right away because I knew that I was pregnant. I knew I was going to have to take time off for maternity leave. So I figured I would kind of focus on Rude Rock and getting everything going, keeping that online business growing. And then after, kind of my pseudo maternity leave, I wanted to look to kind of get back into, the working world.
Yeah.
Being in Texas, we don't really know anybody here. Like I know Amanda, who lives about an hour away. I've got a couple of other friends, but they all live pretty far away from where we are in Texas. So having my little like kind of team builder community is actually really nice because I feel like I'm actually communicating with adults throughout the day. And I'm not just like stuck in my office at home staring at a computer. So they're very much about like that team camaraderie build. It's a lot of like former strength coaches and gym owners that have all kind of made that transition and are now working in more of like the software tech side of it.
Yeah.
But it's been a lot of fun to see kind of the inner workings of the software and all of the cool like developments that they're doing for the industry, because a lot of it, like, there's so many coaches that are still programming on Excel spreadsheets and pen and paper.
Oh my God.
And I was one of them, a year ago, like no shakes, like that was me.
Yeah.
But there's so much more that you can access when you start to take your programming online. And it's not even from like a convenience standpoint of like putting the programming together, but the way it's able to track data on your athletes, whether it's through lifts or if you're creating your own like evals and things like that. Like there's just so much available on the platform itself. And so I'm finding it very interesting, like learning kind of the nuts and bolts of all of that and how they're looking to kind of move forward and improve the experience for not only the athletes using the app, but for the coaches providing information to their athletes.
Yeah, I mean, seriously, like 2 years ago was my last coach. I've been just kind of doing my own thing since then.
Sure.
But she had an Excel spreadsheet, and in the top right corner above the graph, she had like all of my maxes. And I just remember thinking about like, how often is she actually like scrolling over and looking at those, like, because if you have a multitude of different athletes, it's super hard to, when you're looking at their programming, when they're in person, it's a little bit easier. You remember, you kind of like, and you can kind of tell based off what they're lifting. But like, how often are you looking over and comparing like my results, if like you have the person inputting results into your Excel spreadsheet, comparing that to like my actual lifts, you know?
Right. Oh yeah.
You could just access so much more. And then on the flip side of that, kind of what you were talking about is, I know that it's possible to put YouTube links or videos into the Excel spreadsheets, but it's so much easier when you're using the software. And if you have a newer athlete that like is still going to be remote, then being able to look back and say like, all right, this is what I'm trying to do with whatever my coach has assigned to me, you know, because on these apps, I can not only just put in YouTube videos, I can record my own video and send it to the athlete, because I might want it to be a little bit different than what it's like called on YouTube, you know? So those are the really important things.
Yeah. And that's been pretty cool. So I've been kind of filming a lot of like the complexes that I'll give my athletes in their programming.
Yeah.
So that way they can see the full video in the app itself. And then there's even a place where you can put in like additional details for the lift itself. So like if you want them to, you know, different cues to remember for specific exercises, you can add that in there. So now for, you know, especially for remote coaching, when you're not there in person, the athlete's watching the video, but then you can go back and take a look at those details and it's all right there. And you're like, okay, this is what I'm doing. And I need to focus on, you know, weight distribution and, you know, keeping my back tight. And you can make those individualized for your specific athlete too. So you can get like really detailed with it. And I think for me, especially with like Olympic weightlifting, because it's so nuanced and there's so many things that are so technical about the lifts, that when you get people that are, you know, either beginners or are just training remotely, being able to have that communication back and forth without necessarily being physically in the gym with them is a big game changer.
It's so important, right? Because I mean, people want to feel like they still have the feel of a coach being right there telling them something.
Yep.
You know, like
100%.
it's when they're paying you, they're literally paying for that, to get the feel of you being there in some capacity, whether like, because not every athlete needs the like 3-paragraph detailed on every video comments, exactly. but like every athlete needs something, right? And figuring it out what it is for person, these apps let you do that like easier. Yep. If I take like 5 different athletes, like 3 of them are going to need like 4 sentences for their whole workout, and the other 2 are going to need like a comment on every video, and it allows you to do that, you know, which is awesome. But let's talk about you a little bit now too. We'll come up to this point. So you find out you're pregnant, you have these like 9-10 months. What does your training look like in your first trimester? Like, do you still keep working out? Like, did you get tired? What did the first like 3 to 4 months look like?
So the first 3 to 4 months were interesting. I did still work out. I worked out through my entire pregnancy, which I'm pretty proud of, but it obviously changed, you know, trimester to trimester. But in the first trimester, I think the biggest thing that I wasn't really expecting was the fatigue, the way that hits you, and knowing now, you know, kind of living through it, but then also like recognizing it and asking a lot of my friends who had already had children. I was like, what is going on? And they were like, yeah, the first trimester, just like do what you can, because you're just so exhausted. And everybody tells you, you know, you got to get to the second trimester. When you hit that second trimester, like your energy shoots right back up. So it's true. Like I was like, no way, I'm going to be like this for the, you know, the next 9 months, and it's going to be awful. And I can't even get off the couch, because I had days where like, if I got off the couch to go coach, I would immediately go right back and have to take a nap. Like
it was wiped out,
exhausting.
Oh man.
Yeah.
Well, before you keep going, like the first to second trimester and like the energy boost, why is that? Like, cause I don't know anything as a guy. Is that like the baby starts growing and like they're feeding you more energy, or is it just you get more used to it?
You get more used to it basically. So a lot of it is just in the beginning, that initial development through those first, cause I didn't find out I was pregnant until I think I was 6 weeks or so. And even then, funny enough, I took a test to prove that I wasn't, because we were.
And that's the one.
So we were trying, but I had just gotten off of the pill, and I had been on it for so many years that I was like, you know, it's going to take my body like a year or 2 to adjust before, you know, we're really going to try. And, but I was a little late and I was like, you know what, let me just make sure that way, I know, and I'm, not doing anything crazy. And sure enough, I took a test and within like 2 minutes, that thing came back and said pregnant.
Wow.
Oh my God. So, so when I found out, I had started to feel like, I remember the week before I took the test, I had one day where I slept great and I woke up and I was exhausted, had my normal coffee. And I remember thinking to myself, I was like, I have so much stuff to do. I don't understand why I'm so tired. Like I slept so well. This is so strange. And come to find out that's why. But basically the baby is just taking all of your resources in those first few months. I mean, it's taking all of your resources the entire time. Pregnancy brain. I thought that was a myth, not a myth. That's a real thing. It's wild. And the way my doctor explained it, basically the baby is taking all of the blood that's usually like helping
the extra blood
your
for the
power.
brain. Yeah.
Baby's just taking all of that.
Wow.
So, but in those first few months, because your body is not used to it and it's something completely brand new, it's just pulling everything. So you're just way more fatigued and exhausted. And then once you kind of hit that 14-week mark, you start to come out of it. And you have like, that's like the time for like the pregnancy glow and you have all of this energy and things like that. Like that's when that kind of hits. And it's true. So I would say in my first trimester, my goal was to work out 3 times a week at least. Sometimes that looked like working out twice a week and then going for like a walk with the dogs. And then, it really, the biggest thing that I learned right away was to listen to my body and to just follow how I felt.
Yeah.
I've been training for so long. I've been working out for so long, and I'm very fortunate that I know how my body feels and how I respond to different workouts and things like that. So if I did something that I felt was kind of easy and it landed me on the couch for like the next few hours and I couldn't really do anything, I was like, okay, that's too much for right now. So it's a lot of like figuring out how to get in tune with your body and knowing what you can and can't handle, along with, and I should preface this, like along with being cleared by your doctor. So like I never had an issue, one, because I had worked out in the past, but I didn't have any kind of like health complications or things like that with my pregnancy. So my doctor was always very much like, if you feel good and you're okay to do it, have at it. But, be smart, be reasonable, watch your heart rate, make sure if your heart rate elevates that it's recovering at, the correct pace. And all of a sudden you're not staying elevated for an extended period of time, things like that. So there's just little things to kind of watch here and there more than anything.
Yeah. And like you said, when you have like the extensive exercise background and training background that you have, it's a little bit easier on that side. But when you went to the doctor, did you feel like, obviously they were telling you those things, did you feel like they communicated to you effectively, kind of like the do's and don'ts and the markers and the signs for what you should look for?
Yes and no. And the only reason I say no is because the doctor that I've known for years. So she knew a lot of my background and what I did as a coach. So I feel like she didn't have to kind of dive too deep into that. But, she was big on reminding me, to watch my blood pressure, to make sure that I'm staying hydrated, to make sure that I'm eating, and to really just, the big thing that she emphasized, which I hadn't considered, a lot of people, when they work out, they'll base like how difficult the workout was or how much it, fatigued you in that moment. And one thing that she told me to kind of really look out for was, how do you actually feel like 4 hours later? Like, is your body uncomfortable? Are you overly exhausted? Like, what does that look like? Basically, what does your recovery from that workout look like hours down the road? Because that's going to affect you more than anything else, which I had never really considered. Obviously, recovery is a big part of training and things like that, but looking more for those markers and those signs after I had worked out versus like in the moment of training, I thought that was something that was super interesting. So that was something I kind of kept an eye out for.
Yeah, I mean that makes sense too, right? Because like on a average every day when you're not pregnant, if you're still tired or fatigued 4 hours later, you would just like be like, whatever, this is just a part of the training, or you would just keep moving. Like you wouldn't really think about it. Like you
Right.
kind of expect to just be tired, like even if you're not regularly tired 4 hours later, but it's a cause for concern if you have, if you're essentially splitting your daily energy expenditure,
Yes.
going back into the training days
Yeah.
or the strength and conditioning stuff for that answer there. But what about the other side now? Like, did you have other women that were in the shoes like before you that not only were pregnant, but also like trained extensively? Did you have people to look up to?
Yeah, so I did. So funny enough, one of the assistant coaches at East Coast Gold, her name's Zoe. She and I ran the youth program.
Nice.
While we were both there in Virginia Beach, and she was pregnant literally a year ahead of me. So it was funny because she got pregnant and it was the first time that they had like Nationals Week in Detroit. And she and I were there for all 10 days while she was pregnant. And we were kind of joking around because she was like, Danny and I were talking about it and we were getting ready to start trying and everything. She was like, how funny would it be if I'm pregnant this year and then this time next year you're pregnant? And I was like, no way,
like...
blah, blah, blah. And then sure enough, I was pregnant for Nationals Week in Vegas.
You were like, you can have Detroit, I'll take Vegas.
Yep. But no, it was really cool because I got to see her workout, and then she's actually certified in birth fit. So I not only got to kind of see her progression through her pregnancy and what she did, but I also got to kind of utilize her brain when it came to me and my situation and what I should do, shouldn't do, things to look out for. Like, they tell you to keep an eye on coning in your abdominals. So like when your abs start to kind of like make like this coning shape based off of like the pressure that you're, applying on your abdominal wall, that's when you need to start cutting out certain exercises. So you still want to do core exercises and core movements, but like pull-ups is a big one. A lot of women will see coning immediately. Some don't. Like it's really a case-by-case basis. I started noticing some coning like when I would do dead bugs. So then I had to remove dead bugs from my exercises, but I was still doing there's a fine line because you still want to do core work and keep your core strong, but you don't want to elicit that coning response because that's what can lead to, diastasis. So, which is where the separation of the abs.
Yeah. That's super interesting. And like having to learn your body, like after so many high-level athletes have to relearn their body, and they spent all those years knowing exactly how their body is going to respond to A, B, C, D, and E. So then the change is like such a hard path to take. One of my close friends here, one of the athletes at CrossFit King of Prussia, she had a baby. I think Jackson is 6 weeks old now, and she trained through her entire pregnancy. And like I said, she's a high-level athlete, so she was able to keep most 85% probably of her capacity from before throughout her whole pregnancy. She got cleared to come back, and her second day working out again was Flight Simulator, which is just 500 double unders or something like that. She was double under monster beforehand. So then when she came back, she said she didn't do double unders her whole entire pregnancy. She came back and she PR'd that workout. And it's crazy how people can maintain capacity to cross that. But you know what? Today's workout is strict pull-ups. And she said she wasn't great at them before, and now they're even harder. Mm-hmm. So she's improved or maintained for one thing, but the other thing has now become increasingly difficult,
It's interesting how it happens. So I took snatching out of my training pretty early on, and I only did that because I had what's called round ligament pain in my pregnancy, which is literally just basically your uterus is expanding, and the muscles that kind of innervate around that, you can feel that stretching. So it feels like this stretching, pulling sensation. It's perfectly normal. Some women experience it, some women don't.
So when you were tall like that, you felt the pain?
I could feel it. So like I would hit that overhead position and I could feel that pulling. And I was like, you know what? I'm good. Not worth it.
What about jerks?
Kept jerks in the whole way through. I was still jerking.
That wide hand position. Yeah.
I was still jerking in my, into my third trimester. I took cleans out somewhere between like the beginning of my third trimester, just because at that point, the belly was so big that for me, it was throwing my technique off. So I was like, not worth it. I don't want to risk accidentally hitting my belly with the barbell. I don't want to start doing a weird, bicep curl to get it around my body.
Yeah, no bad habits.
Yep. So I took it out. I did a lot of like landmine cleans and like dumbbell cleans. I even still did I did some dumbbell snatching and stuff like that. But I started to take those things out towards the end. But coming back, it felt like riding a bike.
Yeah.
So in some ways, and then in other ways, my body still felt very disjointed. So like I could do the movements and I could do the exercises. And if I watched them, back on a video, I'm like, okay, that looks pretty good. Like I can clean up a couple things here and there, but like that looks really good. But sometimes internally, I felt almost like a baby deer. Like I didn't necessarily feel completely like back in my like training body, probably until like, I'd say the 4-month mark.
Of postpartum?
Postpartum. Yeah.
Interesting. I want to go back though. So you guys are moving around the same time as your second trimester started, right? Yep. When did the decision to move come up? And what was your mindset like when you're thinking, I'm going to be moving while pregnant, like cross country kind of?
So lots of different things. So we knew we would be moving at some point based off of Danny's job.
Yeah.
It was a matter of if we were going to California or if we were going to Texas. Oof. So yeah.
Talk about a big difference.
Right. So we knew that was coming though. And then Texas ended up being the winner in the end. So I don't know. Danny and I are a little crazy, I guess, in a good way. But we love a good like adventure and a good like life shakeup and all of that stuff. So, I had the initial like, this is going to be tough because I'm pregnant, more so because our family is all on the East Coast. So like we're taking the little baby and we're heading out here and, not having them being able to like see her all of the time. Like we
that support system. Yeah.
So like having that support system through through postpartum, that was something that I was kind of concerned about. But as far as like picking up and moving, I was like, yeah, let's do this thing. Like this is going to be fun. And it was, thankfully, because I was in my second trimester, I wasn't very big. I wasn't very tired. I certainly was not a big contributor to removing furniture off of the truck and on the truck, but like the car ride, we actually did like a fun little road trip. And we stopped in South Carolina, and then we stopped in Florida and cut across, spent a night in New Orleans. So like we kind of took our time. So it was never really too much on me to be able to handle, which was really nice. And then, we had plenty of time to kind of like move in and get settled because we moved here in September and then she wasn't born until January. So we had a couple months to like get the house ready and get her room ready. So it was a lot of fun.
Yeah. Never had to feel like super rushed then. That's really good. Putting people under that time constraint pressure is so hard.
Yeah. Because that was one thing we had kind of talked about looking back. He was like, should we have waited until you had the baby and then move? But in my mind, that would have been more difficult, I think, because moving across country with a newborn, navigating that, and then having to like, set up the house and put things away and, make it feel like home. I feel like that would have been more stressful and time consuming with a newborn versus like her just kind of being along for the ride in my belly.
Yeah. I mean, she had a crib to go to right away, so
Exactly.
that's always a benefit. You can't take your time with the newborn driving cross country. So that would have been a lot harder there. What's the training look like once she's born? And then, back to the second trimester. What's the training look like when you guys move over there? And you get a little bit more energy.
So honestly, with the energy, I started dipping back into like a little bit of my own training, old training style, with the exception of like pulling out different exercises and things like that. But I had a good volume, good level of intensity. I want to say I was still hitting somewhere between like 70 to 80% of my lifts. I would lower the volume significantly, but I was still able to get some heavy weight in there. I went from 2 to 3 days a week to basically aiming for 3 to 4 days a week. And typically
you went back up.
It's a 4-day. Yep. I went back up. I had the energy to do it and I felt really good. So again, it was one of those things where just listening to my body, if I had a week where I felt terrible, maybe I only got 3 days in and that was okay. But for the majority, I was able to get a nice like 4-day training split in through that second trimester, which was really cool.
Did you switch doctors too to like it being in Texas? What was that process like? Did you feel comfortable too, like with the new doctor?
That might be a whole podcast in itself.
Oh man.
No, my doctor here was fantastic. She was phenomenal. And I had a pretty high bar because my doctor in Virginia Beach, like I said, I had been with her for years and I loved her. So moving here, I was a little nervous because I wanted to make sure I found someone that I was comfortable with, that kind of was in line with how I wanted to deliver my baby and everything. And I got just very, very fortunate and very, very lucky that I found a doctor who was phenomenal. She was super supportive with everything that I wanted to do. She provided like her opinion on certain, situations when it came time to deliver and things like that. But ultimately, like I was in control and that was huge. The biggest issue was the healthcare situation. So being self-employed, you get your healthcare through the marketplace. And in Virginia, I never had an issue. Like every year you reapply for health insurance. And some years I had Optima, some years I had Anthem. I was able to keep my doctors the entire time. It was never an issue.
Yeah.
When I moved to Texas, same thing. Only this time I made sure to get like a good tier of health insurance because prior to that, I was like, oh, I can get the lowest level. I'm never really sick. I don't really.
Yeah, I'll be fine. Yeah.
Yeah. But being pregnant, I was like, okay, I need a better deductible and all that. So I tried to pick a good tier and my doctor was in my network and the hospital that she practiced at was out of my network. So I had to go through all these loops and was on the phone with health insurance companies for, it felt like forever, but literally from the time we moved here in September all the way through having the baby to like basically file for exemptions and things like that. And United Healthcare was basically going to screw us and having to pay outright for the hospital and everything. But thankfully, my girl decided to help me out and she came in January. So in realizing all of this stuff was going to happen, my original due date was the end of December. So I had United Healthcare through December. And when it came time to reapply, I knew and understood how things were going. So I switched to Blue Cross Blue Shield and everything was covered.
Yeah.
So thankfully, because she waited to come in January, we were covered and we were good to go. But it was pretty stressful leading up to that whole situation. And like I said, my doctors were phenomenal. The doctor's office was trying to, contact the health insurance people and work with me and work with them. And it was the insurance that was crazy.
Yeah, those are two different fields. I mean, they have to work in conjunction, but not actually together. Exactly. Your baby's really bringing all the good luck in there. A little bit of ice, but she went to the next year because that's a big hassle, man.
Oh my God.
I know this as a full-time coach too. I know the struggle, the insurance. I'm like prepping for next year right now, to see what I'm going to switch over to.
Nice. Yeah.
It's tough.
It is. It's something that you kind of take for granted when you have an employer that provides insurance because you don't really think about it. And then when you're going through and navigating it yourself, you're like, wow, there's so many other things that I need to like be aware of and, pay attention to and this and that. And it was something that even I didn't realize state to state was so different, because in Virginia, I've never had an issue and had used, the marketplace for 4 or 5 years. And then moving down here, I was like, oh, okay, there are some other like nuanced things that the way like health insurance in Texas is run that you need to pay attention to in that marketplace side.
Right. And you don't know until you're actually in it.
Exactly.
That's the hard part.
And that was the thing. Like I would call a couple of places and they were like, what insurance do you have? I'm like, United Healthcare. They're like, oh yeah, we take that. And then I would give them my ID number and they're like, oh no, we don't take that United Healthcare. What?
There's different ones. Got it.
Yeah. So like I had no idea. So that was something that I learned and better how to ask the doctor's office different questions about what they covered, which, you don't know until you're in it.
It's crazy. Oh my God. Healthcare is so annoying. And just like you said, if you just work for a job that you just, as soon as you start getting paid, they give you healthcare, or maybe you do your 90 days and then they give you healthcare. You have no idea, like kind of what we're talking about, right?
Yeah, exactly.
But as we get closer to the due date that already happened in your story, right? My next question is, I know that you're like a high performing person and you take your work serious, you want to do well. What was like your work schedule and your work capacity like? Like, I know you probably got more tired of the first trimester. What was it like for you to have to accept backing away from work more?
It was hard. It was very difficult. And it was something that Danny and I talked about a lot. He kind of jokes on me, but so that second trimester, I felt super productive. I kept pretty normal hours. I did my Rude Rock online stuff in the morning. I had a couple of clients that would come in and out of the gym at the house that I would train, and then I would go coach at ECG. Like nothing had changed.
Right.
Even in the first trimester, I still maintained my coaching hours. Rude Rock online, I got done. Like I was much more like, these are the things that are a priority that I need to get done for today, and everything else, if I can do it, if I have the energy for it, great. If not, then I'm going to save my energy to go coach later. That was kind of how I looked at the first trimester. Second trimester was more back to normal. And then as I kind of got into that third trimester, and you start getting closer, you start getting that fatigue again. And that was where my brain, I felt like I was telling a great story. And Danny was like, Nicole, like, he's like, I don't even know what you're talking about anymore. Like the tangents and the blanking of the mind, like it was wild. So in that third trimester, I really had to focus on what are the priorities? What do I need to get done? And I looked at it more so from like an entrepreneur standpoint. So like I wanted my maternity leave, but nobody's paying me for my maternity leave. So what do I need to get done now for the next 8 weeks? So that way I can just focus on my recovery. I can focus on the baby and know that like Rude Rock is in good hands and it's continuing to grow and it's not taking any kind of a hit. So I basically pivoted that third trimester to making sure that I had content to, come out on social media, making sure that my online clients, normally I like to program a month at a time so that they get their program. We can make any adjustments through that 4 weeks and then go on to the next. But what I did was I actually programmed out 12-week programs for everybody. So that way, if I needed to, I could go in and tweak a few things here and there for them before I mailed. I still sent them like a month at a time.
Yeah.
But basically I had everything laid out for them. So that way I didn't have to go in and build a program on my maternity leave. I was able to pull it up, make any changes that needed to be made, and then send it off to them.
You didn't have to be sitting there trying to like make a whole cycle, like you had the general outline of it and maybe like mix and match, move some pieces around.
Exactly. Yeah. So I started to pivot really after we got to Texas, after we got settled in and everything. I basically started pivoting to, okay, how do I make sure that those 8 weeks of maternity leave are actual maternity leave and rest and recovery, because it's wild, and we were very fortunate. Like Layla sleeps very, very well. Even when she was a newborn, she would only wake up once in the middle of the night, which is really unheard of. Like I know how fortunate I was from that regard. But you don't know what you don't know. It was my first baby. I had no idea what to expect. And you're tired. You're trying to figure out like what this little potato needs and wants and how to comfort it and soothe it. And, what this cry means versus like what her like sleep time cues are so when to put her down for a nap. Like you're trying to navigate so much of an unfamiliar space that like the thought of trying to sit down and actually write a program in the middle of that.
No way. Yeah.
No way. No shot. Yeah. No shot. And like I said, she was a good baby. Like she cried when she was hungry. She would get, fussy here and there, like, all babies do. But she didn't have colic. So it wasn't something where like she would just cry for hours on end for no reason. Like we're very fortunate in that regard. But like your mental capacity is just not there because your body is trying to recover. And especially like, if you have a vaginal delivery versus a cesarean, like the recovery is going to be a little different for each of those, but both are like having a baby is basically like I'm going to mess it up. But basically, like even not having a cesarean, even having a vaginal delivery, like the trauma that your body goes through, you have to recover.
100%.
Physically, mentally, emotionally, there's so much happening that you don't realize it, especially for like high level athletes, because you're so used to putting your body through so many rigorous things that you're like, yeah, I got this. This is another thing. And then after you have the baby, you're like,
buddy,
completely different. Like this is a whole new uncharted territory that you have to navigate.
For sure. And like in those uncertain times, did you like ever have any thoughts? It's like, wow, I'm never going to be back to like what I was before.
No, not necessarily that, mostly because I knew that it was just going to take time. And that you just need to be patient. And that's kind of like a double-edged sword, I feel like, because I rationally knew that, I'm still only 5 months postpartum. Like this takes time. I grew a baby for 10 months in my body. Right. My body went through some incredible trauma to do that. So in coming back postpartum and working out, I knew that it was going to be a long game. Like I didn't expect to go back into the gym and immediately, back squat and PR, or anything like that. And I didn't want to. Like my body was not ready for anything like that. So I knew that I needed to kind of follow a good progression and just let myself kind of recover and allow my body to essentially do its thing. And it did. I started with a pelvic floor physical therapist right at like the 6-week mark. And they taught me basically how to focus on reconnecting, my diaphragm to my pelvic floor, breath work and things like that. So that way, by the time I was cleared at 8 weeks to work out again, I was able to slowly start to do some body weight things and then some loaded movements and things like that. And I'm just keeping it very much on a linear progression. Like that's how I'm kind of building back in. And with how things are feeling and how things are moving now, I don't really have any concern for like, I'm not going to be where I was, before I got pregnant or anything like that, because eventually I'll get there.
Yeah, it's all going to come back in time now, right? You started off with the pelvic floor and core stuff, built the foundation, and then just kind of rebuild back up. And then, once you get to a certain point, and it's like this with all strength things, all strength conditioning in a program. And once you build the foundation, everything comes you can kind of almost like 2x, 3x, 4x as you keep going through. The longer you stay on that path, the quicker the gains are going to come, the longer you stay in whatever you're actually doing.
Exactly. Yeah. And that's the biggest thing that I've kind of looked at in my postpartum is not trying to force or overdo too much. Like I want to work out hard and I want to feel good while I'm training, but I'm still very much in the mindset of listening to my body. So like if I go really hard on Monday and I, really haven't recovered until Thursday, then maybe I trained on Wednesday and I just, take the intensity down, or maybe I skip that day. Like I'm still very much at a place where I'm listening to my body and what it needs. And then over time, I'll be able to get back to where I was, because really, which I didn't realize until I spoke with my physical therapist, you don't actually start to feel like yourself physically, hormonally, mentally, all of that 2 years after you had a baby.
Wow. When she was born, did you feel like now I'm a mom, or did that take a little bit, or are you still trying to find that?
I still have moments where I'm like, I can't believe I have a baby. Like, I can't believe I'm a mom. But no, it came natural. Well, being a mom and just being like, I love this little baby and I want to take care of it and I want to nurture it and all of that came very naturally. And I think a lot of that is just, I like to work with kids. So like I have a very good rapport with like my youth weightlifters and things like that. And like the parents always used to tell me like, oh, you're going to be a great mom, like blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, how do you know? Like I work well with children. I really do. And so
wait, you didn't think that beforehand? Were you really questioning it, or were you just kind of saying that?
I never really thought about it, honestly. I didn't know if I always wanted to have children, honestly. It was something that like through my 20s, I wasn't really sure, like, yeah, that might be cool, but I don't know, take it or leave it kind of thing.
Yeah.
And then, let's see, Danny and I got married when I was 28. And that was kind of the first time he wanted to be a dad. And that was the first time where I really started to think about it a little bit more. And there was something about the thought of us, being able to create something that was a little bit of him and a little bit of me
together.
Was something that was special.
That's awesome.
So that was when it first started to kind of like, maybe. And then in my early 30s, my brother had my nephew, and I fell in love and was like, yeah, I can do this. I want one.
Yeah.
And so then, Danny and I talked about it, in our timeline and, when we wanted to kind of start trying and things like that. But I never really, I've always been more of like a nurturing, caring person. Like I like to, even like my friend groups, like I'm the one kind of taking care of everybody and things like that. But I never really equated that to being a mom. So it was one of those things where I had those like moments of doubt while I was pregnant, because I was like, oh my God, but it was more so my life is going to change. And I think part of the reason why I didn't want to have a kid initially in my 20s is I always used to tell people, well, I'm just selfish. And not like a selfish person, but like, I like my routine. I like how I do things. I like the way things are set up. Like one of the conversations Danny and I had before I got pregnant, I was like, is it selfish to say like, things are going really well for us? This is obviously going to throw a little bit of a kink in the wheel, and not in a bad way, but like things change. That's
real life. And that's adult conversation.
Exactly. Like, and it's something, to talk about and consider. And it was one of those things where like, okay, well, do you want to be a mom and a parent? And do you want to create that sacrifice and kind of change things around? Or do you want to, just leave things the way they are? And we both agreed, no, we're okay with finding that change and finding that balance. So one thing that he and I talked about, and that I talked about with a lot of my friends who had already had kids, which was some of the best advice that they ever gave me. They were like, a lot of people will tell you, oh, the baby's going to change your whole life and it's going to, you're never going to be the same and do the same things. And I had several parents tell me, the baby, you're not coming into the baby's life. The baby is coming into your life. So you don't have to adapt to the baby. The baby is going to adapt to what you're doing. And obviously that's going to be, dependent on like what the situation is and things like that. Like baby's not going to come to a concert with me at 10:30. You know what I mean? Like things are going to change, but ultimately, like if you like to travel, if you like to go hiking, if you like to do those things, there's no reason that the baby can't come along for the ride. Right. When I get back into, coaching in a gym, she's going to be right there at the gym, hanging out, learning and seeing, and like
you just had a baby at 12 o'clock. It was fine.
It's
like I said, 5-week
one of the best things for them, honestly. Like I can't wait for her to be in that environment and things like that. But
we're gonna have another baby here tonight at 4:30. So
it's cool. Like it's definitely a game changer. But now that I'm in it, it still seems weird that I have a baby, but at the same time, it seems very natural. Like it's just this is just what I do. Like if she's crying, if she's upset, I'm going to figure out what's wrong, and I'm going to, try to get her to not be upset. Like whatever, it kind of just it came very natural.
That's awesome.
So, yeah.
So Nicole, as you're settling, well, it sounds like you're settling into this role and keeping things rolling. What's next for you? What are you hungry for? What are you going to do with Rude Rock? What's next for you professionally?
So professionally, I'm definitely excited to see where Team Builder goes, and kind of where I, work my way within the company. They've got a lot of moving parts, and they're growing pretty quickly. So I'm really excited to be a part of all of that with them. Awesome. But Rude Rock is forever our baby, and that thing is growing as well. So I'm really excited to kind of continue moving that forward. I actually got into a lot of marketing with that. So I learned how to really do email marketing and funnels and things like that to kind of promote a lot of our online stuff. We're looking at a lot more courses and educational things for coaches on the Rude Rock end. So we have a big course that we put out last year called Fascia Chronicles. So that's a huge educational piece that basically takes coaches through understanding what fascia is, how it affects the body, and how you can implement it into training and actually train fascia and use it in sport applications and things like that. So we're doing a lot of things like that. And we're also getting ready to put out this is really one of Danny's big projects. It's called a restorative training protocols. So we're basically putting out ebooks that break down. So like we've got one on knee health. So different injuries that can occur in the knee, why they're occurring, how those mechanisms work, but then also taking like tangible applications that you can do to improve, whether it's, trying to prevent injury, or if you're coming off of an injury and you're working to kind of get back in the gym or on the field, things like that. So we've got a lot of exciting kind of online products coming out with Rude Rock with that. And then from there, just continuing to grow our online programming.
That's awesome. What about for you personally? Are you continuing weightlifting? What's going to happen next?
Yeah. So for me personally, I'd say I want to get back into coaching in person. I love working in the online space with weightlifting, but as we talked about, earlier,
you want to talk to people, you want to be with people.
Yeah. 100%. And just the atmosphere and the energy of like being in the gym and coaching and working with athletes. So, probably over the next year or so, that's going to be my focus, is getting back into the gym, especially once Layla gets a little bit older and she can, really navigate handling some of those crazier hours in the gym that come along with coaching. Be looking to kind of getting back into all of that, and jumping back into the Olympic weightlifting scene. That's something that I'm pretty hungry for. I definitely miss that element and that environment. Like I'm in Colorado right now, and it feels so weird. Like I'm just watching all the stuff happening on USA Weightlifting and all my friends at ECG and everything. And so that's something that I'm hungry for and definitely looking to get back into.
I can't even watch nationals right now. I took like in the past year to like work on like a lot of my CrossFit stuff. I'm just kind of get back into weightlifting training.
Okay.
because I'm studying for my level 3 right now for CrossFit. So it's like,
Nice.
oh man, I went to one meet this year. That's it. But I've been to like 8
Really?
CrossFit events. Yeah. I've been
Okay.
kind of keying in on that. Speaking of, I meant to do this in the middle of the podcast, and we just jumped right into like some great conversations. So I didn't. I want to ask you at least one weightlifting question. All right. Because I
Okay.
feel like this is a hot button on the internet right now.
Okay. Oh, God.
I feel like everything is always going to be case dependent. But let's
Yes.
say you're programming pulls for an athlete.
Okay.
For most of your athletes, or I don't know if this could just be like, it's always going to be the same way. When
Mhm.
you write those pulls, do you want them to finish with shoulders behind the bar or shoulders in front of over the bar, more like a lashes style? Which one are you more go to?
I'm more go to behind the bar
Just
because
like a vertical position.
Yep. So, and the reason I say that is the pull is essentially a, strength variation for the Olympic weightlifting movements. We're trying to not only build some strength in those positions, but we also don't want to do anything to really change the integrity of the lift itself. So if I'm trying to finish in a true triple extension before I start to change direction and move under the barbell, then I want to find that verticality. So I'm going to coach my pulls to finish in that true vertical position. It's the same thing where you look at, bending the elbows in the pull versus, leaving them straight and locked,
arm, yeah.
doing a high pull and things like that. And I'm pro, keeping the arm straight. And it's because you're going to hit triple extension, then the elbows start to engage and bend as you're moving under the bar. So if you're trying to pick that bar up with your arms and your body's still going up, then it's going to affect the timing of the lift when you go to put it all together. So I like to utilize the pulls in a way that it's going to mirror the movements in the lifts themselves.
Be as close to it as possible. I have at least 2 more because that one just like, I know you maybe kind of just answered it there, but it threw another one in there for me. So
Sure.
do you ever program high pulls? Do you ever pull in like elbows bending and finishing with the elbows coming high and outside?
So I do. I will program high pulls, but when I program high pulls, the finish is more of the elbows coming up and the body coming down. So rather
Like
than
a panda
being all the
pull.
way, yep, exactly. So rather than being all the way up with the arms bent in the high pull, I'm actively creating that movement of pulling myself under the bar. Yep.
Yeah, initiating the elbows being an initiator the shrug and elbows being an initiator for the pull under, right? Because that's what we want athletes thinking. Right after you extend, start to initiate the pull under, right?
Yep, exactly.
Now, my third question is, and I don't know if this is a hot button online, but with some of the coaches around here, this is definitely a thing.
Okay.
How do you feel about push jerks versus split jerks in the sense of, do you make all athletes that come to you live or die by the split jerk, or do you sometimes let athletes, if it's better for them, do the push jerk in competition?
So this one is definitely an it depends. If you're CJ Cummings, you're not touching, you know what I mean? Like you push jerk, you do your thing, like you've got that, I personally have never seen somebody that can push jerk more than they can split jerk with those, obviously there are those exceptions, and that's why they're competing.
But what about can they clean and push jerk more than they can clean and split jerk? Have you ever known people that do that? No. Oh, good for you.
No, because, so if that's the case and there's something going on, then that's when you want to take a look at the split jerk and what's going on with your split jerk that you're able to do more in your push jerk. Because if you think about it realistically, you're able to get lower on the bar in the split jerk. So in theory, you're able to do more weight in that split jerk. Again, there are obviously exceptions to that rule, but majority of like your average person that's coming into the gym, that's like, oh, I'm a push jerker and not a split jerker. It's like, there's probably something going on with your split jerk that needs to be fixed. And then it's going to change to be the opposite. Like it's very rare to have those people that are just I push jerk and they exist. Don't get me wrong. They do. And if that's the case and, you're, a national level lifter and you're looking at, finishing high and you push jerk, then yeah, maybe that's not something that we're going to change. But for
Let's keep
people
rolling
that
with the push jerk. Yeah,
absolutely. But for people that, are coming in and that are learning the lifts and trying things out, like, that's like saying, well, I power more than I clean.
All right, you gotta,
yeah. Do you though? So, it's,
I mean, I confront a lot of people that are like that though, like as a CrossFit coach too. And that is just, all right, well, we are going to your squats are always going to be your accessory, but now your full lifts are now going to become accessory work for you. Mm-hmm. And we're going to keep strengthening through pulls, either in powers, because if you can pull that bitch that high, then yes, your pull should be really strong. And we're just going to keep ladling that on there so that by the time that I fix your squat or your pull under, whichever piece of that is the harder part for you, then now you're full clean, your full lift should be even better.
I know one athlete who was truly the exception, and she understood and she knew, but she was a collegiate rower. So her posterior chain was just ungodly strong and her squats were not. And she knew that's why she could power more than she could clean, because she could power more than she could front squat. So one of those things where she knew and understood. So like she was always working on her squats and trying to build that strength up so that way she could clean more than her power. But she is truly the only person I've ever come across that I was like, okay, but I understood why that made sense. Like, look at what her sport was, growing up and all the way through college, at the level, like it makes sense as to why your body developed the way that it did.
And the sport of rowing, there's no time that I could think of that you are like hip crease below knees, right? You don't spend any time strengthening that stuff. So if you are not that athlete or like someone that's exactly like that athlete, then you're most likely, I'm sorry to say, scared of a full lift. And that's what happens. Like either if it's consciously, unconsciously, it changes. And as a CrossFit coach, like I said, to teach my CrossFit athletes weightlifting stuff, they don't understand that a power and a full lift are the same thing.
Yes.
So like I had to teach that to them, so they're scared of the second one, the full, that whatever happens to make it a full,
I think that's definitely one of the hardest things. And a lot of people will compensate. So like their powers turn into like that starfish, right?
Yeah.
And they're not even really pulling their hips under the bar. They're just widening their legs so much that they can get low.
They're creating depth by a far range of motion. That's what they're doing.
Exactly. Whereas one thing that, I kind of like to follow by, if you're going to fail a power, it should be because it turned into a full.
Yeah.
Like you failed the power because the bar was heavy and it knocked you all the way down into the squat position, and that's okay.
Right. Whenever someone fails a power clean in my classes, if the day is like 1 rep max power clean and they do a squat clean, I'm like, that's good. Like you have a skill,
Right. But versus like, trying to do something crazy with your body and compensate, which is where I think a lot of people that fear the full lifts, that's what they try to do, because they're like, oh, I'm getting low enough, but you're completely out of position. And because your legs are so wide, you can't actually squat because you wouldn't normally squat in that position.
Right.
You're just doing a back squat or a front squat.
Exactly. Which takes it all the way back to what you said before. We want to always try to keep mimicking the full lift, whatever we're doing, right? Whether it's in the pull under, or the full squat,
Yep.
But Nicole, this has been a great episode. I'm sitting here thinking it's time for you to start a vlog at least, or some kind of podcast, like log form here, because I could talk to you for like forever about all these different things. It's like I felt like we were about to start a whole other podcast just about the weightlifting side of things. Like in the second hour there.
And I was like, I could keep going.
Like I said, this has been a great episode. Guys, Nicole Foley back on again. Talk about motherhood. It's been great.
Hell yeah. Thank you, Taylor. I appreciate it. It's been fun.
Hell yeah. Guys, we're going to get out of here. Peace.